Good morning, everyone here at 3D Church. It's great to see you guys. If you're new, I want to say welcome to you. My name is Matt, and one of the guest speakers here. And if you have been coming for a while, you know that we have been in a relationship series called It's Your Move. And we've talked about incredible things, moves that we can all make in our relationship, about believing the best, about learning the art of trading places. Last week, we talked about communication. If you were here, and if you missed any of those weeks, I want to encourage you to jump online because of how just stinking practical all of this stuff is. And today, we're kind of nearing the end of the series, and I'm so pumped about what we're going to talk about today because if you don't know me, by trade, I'm a marriage coach. I'm a relationship coach. I do relationship coaching with businesses. I do relationship coaching with married couples and engaged couples. This year, I'll get to officiate over 70 weddings. Of engaged couples, and so I'll coach about 500 couples this year, just of engaged couples alone. And I tell you that because there's a profound mystery that I've experienced over the last decade or so of being able to coach literally thousands of people, married, engaged, and the like. And it's this. It's incredible to me how two people can look at each other and be like, baby, you are so hot. Let's be hot together. Let's get to the altar and say these vows, I do, and spend an average of $33,000 on a wedding, only to see within 5, maybe 10 years down the road, suddenly they go from, baby, you're my one and only, to I hate your stinking guts. And I want a divorce, right? Like, what is that? Like, what's up with that? Or here's another mystery, right? Domestic violence. Okay, like domestic, like I love you, you love me, like here on our wall is a family tree. You know, Barney's there. And then violence, like I want to hurt you. Right? Like, what is that? Like, what's up with that? And so if you've been coming to this series over the last month or so, you might have been hearing some great things that say, oh, this is how you do communication. Oh, this is how you trade places with your friend or your boss or your spouse or your loved one in some regard or your mother or mother-in-law. That all sounds nice, Matt. That all sounds nice, Keith. That all sounds nice. But you don't understand my situation, right? Because it's messy. And maybe, you know, if like, especially in a romantic relationship, like if you met each other and you fell in love and everything was nice, you were 16 years old and it was beautiful, and maybe if you came from a great family home, you know, where your dad showed up to all of your games and your mom went to your recitals, you know, and like you were validated and encouraged growing up, all of your friends supported you and loved you, your early bosses were like your biggest champions in life, like maybe then you would have a great starting point, right? But for most of us, I mean, we've kind of been dinged up a little bit. Anybody been dinged up in your past a little bit? I know I have. Like, we call that baggage, and if you're like me, you got a couple of carry-ons with that baggage, right? And that's kind of life. And so, because some of you, your dad didn't show up to all of your games. In fact, he didn't come home at night sometimes, right? And your mom, you know, she struggled with her own stuff, and you're not even really sure to this day what that was all about, but you know there were some issues there. And in some cases, there was alcohol and abuse. And in some cases, there were drugs. In some cases, your little brother got all the attention because he was actually the problem child, and you were the good one. And so, as a result, your parents focused on them and ignored you. Anybody have that situation happen? And so, you kind of been dinged up a little bit. And if we could just kind of go row by row, we would probably talk about, all of us would probably have a nice little pity party together. Just talk about how sad our life is, and then we could really probably go there. But that's kind of life. And the way I want to illustrate kind of life today is I want to introduce you to two friends of mine, and their names are Mr. and Mrs. Mugg. Everybody say hi, Mr. and Mrs. Mugg. Hi there, I'm Mr. Mugg. Do you like the stash? I hope so, if you can see it, okay? And hi, I'm Mrs. Mugg. Okay, hi, everybody. This is Mr. and Mrs. Mugg. And, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Mugg, they met like probably so many of you do. You know, they met right in college, and they started dating right out of college. And, you know, life when they first met and started dating was so wonderful because, you know, they were still in the marketing and advertising phase of the relationship. And so they were so careful because they were trying to win each other's hearts. You know what I'm talking about in dating. Everything's really nice. And sure, I mean, they maybe had a couple of bumps along the way, but you know, I mean, life was still so wonderful. And it was so good, they just said, you are the one for me, baby. Let's get married. And so they do. They have a phenomenal wedding up in Estes Park, and they then come down, you know, it's now a month into the relationship, and they're having a little squabble about something, and boop, all of a sudden, they got bumped. And he says, what in the world was that you just do that? She looked at him and she goes, I didn't know you had anger issues. That was never the case in college. And when we dated, like, what's wrong with you? And he was like, well, that's not anything that I did. You did that. What was that? I don't know. And then a couple of months go by and all of a sudden, more. Oh my, that got bumped again, and more stuff just started coming out of that. And she said, what in the world got into you? And he's like, me? What about you? And boom, then it went big. And she said, you know what? You need some space. I'm going over to my sister's house. And so she goes to her sister's house, and she says, you need to spend some time alone. And she goes to her sister's, and they have conversation, like girls do, ladies. She's like, I don't know what got into him. I mean, he was never like that when we dated. And then the guy, he went over to, well, we don't really know where guys go, right? Like, where do guys go? He looked in the mirror, right? And it's like, she just makes me so frustrated. Like, she's so mad. And both of them are spending times having their perspective stories, and their story is starting to grow about what they think about one another. And it's usually not a great story. You know what I'm talking about, right? You ever have stories that start to metastasize and grow and make larger than life? And so after a few days, she decided that it was time to come home. And so they come home, and it's, fine, but it's really not fine. You ever been there? You ever done that? It's the silent treatment, and so everything's kind of good, but, nothing's really happening because there's just not talking. Well, finally they start talking, and boom, it comes out again. She's like, I have no idea what in the world is going on. And he's just like, these beads keep coming out of me because you make these beads, these blue beads come out of me. And she's like, no. She's like, you are the one who make these beads come out of me. And if you would just start doing this and stop doing that and start being more appreciative and stop doing this. And he was like, no. If we were going to get through this relationship, you need to stop doing this and start doing some more of that and love me a little bit more. Start appreciating the things I do and admire the work that I'm doing. And they just get into their prospective relationships. And then boom, it happens again. And this is the nature of what's going on. Anybody been there in a relationship at home or anything like that? Okay, perfect. None of us. Okay. This is a completely unapplicable story then. Perfect. Right, I'm the only one. Now, here's amazing. What's so incredible about Mr. and Mrs. Mugg is this. They think the reason why these blue beads are coming out of him is because she is making them come out of him. And vice versa, the reason why she thinks these pink beads are coming out of her is because he makes these beads come out of him. This is the way that so many relationships go. Are you with me? But the truth is what? The reason why these blue beads keep coming out of him is because they're in there. And the reason why these pink beads keep coming out of her is because they're in there. And oftentimes what happens is that these pink beads and these blue beads were in there probably before they even met one another. And so the truth is this, these beads, whatever in you is going to come out of you no matter who's with you. And so we have this issue, I think, going on in our life, and it's so important because every single one of us has stuff in us, and you don't know what's in you until you get bumped. And there is no other relationship more attuned to be able to see what comes out of you than in romantic relationships. That is the number one path. If you've ever been in a romantic relationship of any kind, you know what I'm talking about. This is when it happens and when it comes bumped. Now, it can happen in friendships. It can happen within your mother-in-law. It can happen with your boss. But it is in relationships where you are most committed to where you see this happen. And most people don't really know what's going on in them until you get into relationships that you're committed to. And this is why two people who get married to one another, or two people who are in a committed relationship of any kind, can get madder at one another than any other person on the planet because they got bumped. And all of us have stuff in us that's going to come out of us no matter who's with us. Because the reason is, It comes out of us because it's what? It's in us, right? And so now I want to ask you, what do we do about this? How do we have this conversation about relationships when really so many relationship problems are really just single people problems that I drag from my past into my present, and it starts to affect my future? Are you with me? I mean, this is the question. And so the question is, what do we do? Like, how do we go about this situation? And the answer is actually pretty simple, but the process isn't. Do you know why it's not easy? The process isn't easy because you and I don't have a muscle developed in us yet, keyword, that allows us to be able to grow. And so we are going today to learn the art of how to start paying attention to what's going on inside us. If you want to have great relationships with God, with each other, we need to start being a student of myself. This is the role. And here today, we're going to look at a single proverb that probably most of you, if you grew up in a Christian home or you started being a part of 3D Church for any length of time, you've probably heard this verse. In fact, it's a proverb that Jesus himself quotes in Matthew chapter 15, written by a guy named Solomon, who, as you may know, is considered to be the wisest guy who ever lived. And he actually wrote Proverbs, and specifically the verse is this, Proverbs 4:23. You might have even memorized it. And he said this, above all else. Now, when somebody starts a line like that, I just like to pause and be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Above all else? The guy, Solomon, who wrote the entire Proverbs, right? The guy who wrote Song of Songs about sex and relationships. The guy who wrote Ecclesiastes about wisdom, about life when you're getting old. This guy, above all of these things, he's saying, what's he going to say? I don't know about you, but I like lean in when I see someone say something like that. Above all else, what does he say? Guard your heart. In the Hebrew, which is the original language of the Old Testament, the word heart means the seat of emotion. And the word guard means to pay attention, to protect what's valuable. That's what that means. And so when I say that, again, we can, if I ask you to go, okay, let's go down the road here, everybody, and let's talk about your strategy to guard your heart. Probably most of you look at me with glass eyes being like, what? What are you talking about? A strategy to guard my heart? I have no idea what you're talking about, right? That sounds like psychobabble, Matt. What is this? What does it mean to guard your heart? And Solomon says it's the most important thing we can do. And so it's huge. And you may have discovered maybe in your past relationship, maybe with an ex or something like that, maybe with another person, strangely enough, that maybe you started seeing pink or blue beads start coming out of you. And you're like, I have got to get out of this relationship. And so you go to the next one, and then the next one, and the next one. And 4 wives later, it's crazy. These women keep making all these blue beads come out of me. I don't know what it is. And everybody's like, well, there is a common denominator in all 4 of these relationships. It's you, right? It's you. What's going on inside of you? And Solomon says, listen, like falling in love, especially in a romantic relationship, I mean, that's easy. I mean, if you're human, you can fall in love. It just requires having a pulse. But if you want to stay in love, if you want to make a move that will change your life, you need a strategy. You need a plan that's going to help you guard your heart. And see, we're not all that good at guarding our heart. But you know what we are amazing at? We are incredibly gifted at monitoring our partner's behavior, aren't we? Some of you are pros. Some of you are like archaeologists. It's like, it's incredible the things you can dig up from the past, right? It's like you keep a proverbial file cabinet with you. You bring out the kitchen sink when you need to. You remember 1997 when you said that? I thought you forgave me for that. Nope, I'm bringing it out right now, right? This is kind of how relationships work, and it gets messy. We are so great at monitoring the behavior of a close friend or someone in a committed relationship, but we can be horrible at monitoring our heart, and both are important and connected. And let me tell you how. You see, in your relationship, we all want to feel a certain way, don't we? I mean, we want to feel loved, and we want to feel supported, and we want to feel confident and cherished and represented and taken care of. And you probably never made a list, but these are all things that maybe deep down we really want in a relationship. And then when your husband or wife or fiance or partner or boyfriend or girlfriend, when they say words, these words elicit feelings inside of us. And when you try to get them to start or stop doing something, you do so because it makes you feel bad. You feel hurt. And so after these feelings, they brought up with this relationship, which is why when we fall in love, we say, oh my gosh, you made me feel so incredible. And so what we do is we try to monitor their behavior so that they can continue to make us feel the way we once did when we were dating. And that's why we monitor their behavior, because we're trying to control the situation to get life back the way it was. We love the security they offered. We love that how we were drawn into because of the emotion of that person that they created for us. And it's normal for us to want to keep that emotion alive. That's a good thing. And so what we do is we monitor their behavior. We want that emotion. We want that passion, and that's all normal. But the problem is this. Those emotions are attached to beliefs. And those beliefs connect to our everyday actions or non-actions on a regular basis. And that is where it is so powerful. Let's go back to Proverbs 4:23. Let's continue the verse. He says this, above all else, guard your heart, for some things. Oh, wait, that's not what he says. What does he say? Everything. For everything. Wow, what a word. Everything you do flows from it. In essence, what's in you is going to come out of you, no matter who's with you. Because those beads, they're in you already. And so what we're going to do today is I want you to be able to understand a simple concept, a move you can make instead of monitoring a spouse's behavior. A move you can make that will change your own self and as a result change the relationships around you. It's understanding something that maybe you're not even consciously aware of, but it lurks in the shadows of your subconscious mind. It's called shadow beliefs. Let me hear you say shadow beliefs. Shadow beliefs are where we're landing today, and here's why. Because you know what a shadow belief is? A shadow belief is a lie or part truth. You know, like a lie wrapped in truth that lurks in the shadows of our subconscious mind and yet motivates our actions and non-actions on a regular basis. We're not even aware of it consciously, but it's in there. We all have them. We all have them, and they affect our life. And the reason why shadow beliefs are so powerful, you know why? Because they're a secret. And when they're a secret, they remain powerful in your life and can take control. And as long as they're a secret, they will continue to control your life. And so the question is, well, how in the world do you detect something that's subconscious? How in the world do you be able to unpack that? How in the world can I guard my heart in this way? Well, here's how. Are you ready? Whenever you're in a situation with a partner, with a boss, with a close friend, with a loved one, and you have an emotional response that's larger than the situation at hand. You know, you said this and it should have, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, 1 being low, it should have reacted like a 3 or a 4, but I went 9. Based on my personality, I either blew up, which is me, or I stuffed it and I ran away and I clammed up and I walled off, which is others. Whatever your flavor is, that's how you know, oh, maybe there's something under the surface. And we just keep fighting about these behaviors and these issues, which have nothing to really do with the real problem, which is underneath. Are you with me? And so shadow beliefs are the thing that we're going to do. And there are 4 moves that you can be able to make to be able to understand these things in our life. And so here's the first one. Name the emotion. The first thing that you can do to be able to detect a shadow belief is to name the emotion. Literally say it out loud, okay? Guys, this is very difficult. You're no less emotional than women. We just don't have a very big vocabulary. The average man uses 3 emotional words. I'm angry, I'm frustrated, and I'm pissed, right? It's like we don't really know like other words that we say. I'm sad maybe, I don't know. You know, an average woman uses 14. Well, guys, there are hundreds, maybe thousands of words that you can actually use to be able to understand. I feel resentful, I feel hurt, I feel picked on, I feel ugly, I feel underappreciated, I feel violated, I feel insecure, I feel sorrow, I feel anxious, I feel fearful, I feel like I'm incapable, I feel jealous. These are hard to detect in a mirror. But it's powerful for us to be able to start by naming the emotion that you feel. And when you begin naming your emotion, it begins to lose its power. It's incredible when you just say it out loud and it begins to actually lose its power. I just think I'm jealous that you get to go on all these business trips and I'm here home with the kids. I think I feel jealous. Now this is, when you say this and you do this, it makes me feel, I guess, like a failure. Oh, and it's amazing how when you just say it, that's the first start. And oftentimes, much of what you feel is what you brought into the relationship. Not that what the relationship brought to you, but you already brought that in. Those fears and insecurities were already in you before they even came out of you. But as long as it remains a secret, it will run your life, and it will continue to create a deeper and deeper wedge between you and any committed relationship that you're with in your life. You got to say it out loud. I feel jealous. I feel lonely. I feel like a failure. I feel left out. I feel, guys, okay, let's work on the feeling words, okay? This is not typically our right hand. This is so powerful. And the reason why it's hard is because when it loses its power, what's so crazy is two things. Number one, if it loses its power, I lose my pattern. Some of us are in relationships where we're so comfortable and used to being angry all the time, we don't even know what life would look like if we're not angry. We've gotten so comfortable with being in this season that to be out of it feels like a fish out of water. The second reason why it's really tough is because when you name the emotion and it loses its power, do you know what you lose? I lose my excuse. I lose my excuse. My strategy has been pouting so that I can control you to do what I want. And I lose that excuse. And because now I actually have to get healthy with you in my relationship. And so I lose all of those things, and it's powerful, but at first it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I like this. That's why naming the emotion is so powerful. It's why it's number one. Number two, you ready? Ask yourself as many why questions as possible to detect a shadow belief. All right? To be human is to be like an onion, which means there are layers to us, right? I'll give you an example. Don't judge me. 2 years into my marriage, my wife, Sarah, she typically does a really good job of entering with ignorance as opposed to accusation, but she's human, she screws up. And we started this pattern when she would say something, when she would accuse me of doing something wrong, and I was actually innocent because I'm a blow-up person, I would go, rah! And I would get so angry with her, and I'm like, why in the world would you do this? And I can't believe you do this, and blah, 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 blah. And she would say, hey, just because I sinned against you doesn't give you the right to do it back to me. Well, she was right, but I couldn't figure it out. And it was like, she would do something that should elicit a 2 or a 3, and I was a 9 or a 10 on the Richter scale. Oh, what's going on? Well, here's the deal. I didn't know what to do. And so this went on, not 1 month, not 1 year, not 2 years. This went on for 3 years. I kept getting bumped, but I had no idea. I thought she was the one who bumped me. And so there was a lie wrapped in truth, but I had no idea what it was until I finally got smart and started asking myself as many why questions as possible. And I had to go through the force field of truth. It's not okay to accuse someone of wrong, especially when they're innocent. Is that true? Yeah, that's true. So those are my defense mechanisms. I can't imagine being in prison and not doing it. Kill me now. Oh my gosh. And yet this would happen to me in just a small little way, and I would just have this raging fire. And as I started asking myself as many why questions as possible, do you know what came out of me? Here's what came out of me at the root of what's going on. Don't judge me. I was a pastor at the time too. Here's what I wrote in my journal. Because I'm God, and if you mess with God, there's hell to pay. Oh, snap. Now, take that belief system and compare it to my emotional response. Are they congruent? Heck yeah, they are. I just discovered my shadow belief. I'm God, and if you mess with God, there's hell to pay. Now, this is so powerful because this was going on for 3 years. Not all the time, it didn't happen every time, but it was like about once a month or once every 2 months, and that starts to affect a relationship pretty negatively, pretty fast, as you can imagine. And so the third step that I had to do was I first needed to, as I became aware of the shadow belief, I needed to tell my partner. Your boss, your friend, your loved one, you need to tell them and to be able to help them say, I am starting to be a student of me, and I am so sorry I have been blame shifting you for making these beads come out of me when really these beads are already in me. And this is my issue. And I need to come to you and I need to confess that this is what's going on. And whenever you say these things, it's so powerful. And you start helping people realize, like, hey, these are feelings I'm having. But you don't say, you made me have these feelings. You're saying, I feel this way. I feel unappreciated, or I feel this way, or I have these bad feelings. But you know what? When you say I statements instead of you statements, it's powerful because it's just an observation. It's not a defense. It's just an observation. And it's incredible because the other person, my wife, when I told her this is my stuff, she said, she put on the same jersey. And she got on my team and she said, I'm so glad you told me. Thank you. And we started helping each other instead of like, well, that's all your problems. Or I'm sorry you feel that way. She didn't do that. She just instead said, all right, what do you need from me? How can I come alongside you? And she was powerful at separating the issue with who I am as a person. Separating the issue with my identity, which whenever you get into a conflict situation, you can take it personally, right? And it becomes an identity thing. And so here's what I want you to do. I want you to pay attention to your own heart. Tell your spouse. And then number 4, the last thing you can do is so powerful is this. You ask yourself the question, how can I change the story? My original belief was what? If I'm God, and if you mess with God, there's hell to pay. Well, the only way to defeat a shadow belief is with truth. And so I started asking, God, is there a Bible verse you want to give me? Is there anything else that I can say? And I just sat there for a little bit, for probably 30 minutes, and I in my journal, here's what I said. Are you ready? There is a God, ... and I'm not him. There is a God, and I'm not him. So next time Sarah accidentally accused me of doing something wrong because she's human, instead of entering with ignorance, she entered with accusation. I still, because I'm human, feel those beads coming out of my esophagus. But just before I explode, there is this voice. Thank you, Holy Spirit. There is a God, and you're not him. And that truth starts to diffuse me. Do you know the average person, it takes 70 times minimum to hear a truth statement before you start to believe it? So how many times have I told myself subconsciously that I'm God, and if you mess with God, there's hell to pay? Probably years I had been doing that. But what's so difficult is because I was a pastor at the time, I know you never say those words. I know never to say that. I understand. I've been raised well enough to know what I'm supposed to say, and that's why it's so powerful. It remains a secret. And so it's so powerful now that I'm understanding, like, oh my gosh, I have this issue. And now I need to fight it with truth over 70 times, and I'll start to believe it. This is powerful. You see, so many of our relationship problems are really just personal problems that we drag from our past into our present, and it starts to affect our future. And one of the greatest things that I've ever done was simply pray, God, would you help me overcome this? And he helps us overcome it through awareness. Awareness is half the battle, and then he'll give you a truth statement to begin saying, and you can tell your partner, this is the truth statement. Can we create some strategies for me to be able to say this? I actually put it on my mirror every morning for a month. I just put it on there, and I just said, you know what? There is a God, and I'm not him. Help reinforce that. Put it on a note card. Put it on your dashboard of your car as you're driving to work, whatever it is, and you can start to overcome it. And this is the thing that is so powerful that will really start to move us from monitoring our partner's behavior and moving to monitoring our own hearts. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything we do flows from it. And at the end of your natural ability to love your partner is the beginning of God's love for you to be able to start loving your partner, your coworker, your boss, your friend, to be able to forgive and come to that. You see, I actually believe that God cares more about our relationships than we do. I actually believe that. I actually believe that he wants more for our relationships than we do. And I know this all lands on us today in very different ways. Some of you, it explains your childhood. And for some of you, you explain some of the issues you have. And I just want you to understand, for those of you who are engaged, or you're newly married, or any of these kind of things, or you have a friend that wants to watch this, especially for men, getting married doesn't make you a man. It just makes you a boy with a man-sized problem. Heal the boy inside you, and the man will appear. Ladies, heal the girl inside of you, and the woman will appear. And it will be beautiful in your relationship. And some of you, this may explain why for you, a relationship with God was always herky-jerky, because you have triggers of religion pressed upon you. Maybe you're new to Christianity, or you grew up with that, and there's an aversion for you, and maybe someone dragged you or coerced you and said, they bribed you with lunch, because we're not above that here. We'll do that. But maybe for you, you're like, oh my gosh, that's my aversion. That's my trigger. I have a shadow belief that what God wants is my money, or what God wants is somehow to make me a slave, or what God wants is to ruin my life. I'm not interested in that. But in reality, it's what's so beautiful about the gospel. The truth is that he loves you more than you do, and that he died for you by sending his son so that you could have relationship, not a religion. And that out of a relationship with God, you start to have a relationship with yourself, and you get to know your identity, and you can start taking care of the beads inside of you, which overflows into every other relationship in your life. It starts with God. It allows us to understand ourselves, which connects us to human people. I love Ryan. Not only what he said was powerful, but his British voice is amazing. And can we just say that? That's just awesome. And I hear him like, can you just please talk? Keep going. That's amazing. But he said something so powerful. It's more than just a great message or music that we have. A church is about people. It's about relationships. I love that. And so I think a question that I want to ask every single one of you, regardless of where you're at in your relationship, is to simply say right now, God, what do you want to say to me? God, what do you want to say to me right now? And in your connection card that Ryan pointed out, I want you to just write out a statement that maybe God has for you. Maybe for you, it's saying, I need to actually give God a chance and explore a relationship, or I want to learn more about a relationship. I'm going to write that down. For some of you, you're in a relationship with God, and it's like, but I've been running from God and trying to do things on my own. For some of you, it's, I've been actually guilty of accusing my partner, my friends, of making these beads come out of me, when really I need to start being a student of my own self. What is your thing that God is saying to you? I want to invite you to write that down, because we want to pray for you, because we value you, because we love relationship. And we believe that God is powerful, and that you don't have to do this thing alone, because shadow beliefs can be messy. But it's your move. It's your move. No one's going to force you to do that. No one's going to make you to do that, but it's your move. But I promise you this, it will be the best move you'll ever make if you allow God to work in your heart. Are you with me? Amen. Well, let's go ahead and stand together. I want to pray for you personally. And as we do, I just feel like prompted to say, I want to invite you. Sometimes our physical posture represents an understanding of our hearts. And if you feel comfortable, I just want to invite you to put your hands as a posture, like open, like you're receiving from God. And just to close your eyes and just open your hands as a posture there. And God, as I'm standing right now with beads all around me, I know that that's a representation of the messiness that so many of us are going through in our personal lives, of beads just coming out of us. And God, I actually thank you for that, because when we're bumped, it propels us to actually be a student of what's going on in us, the false beliefs that we have. And so many of us are good at creating spiritual language over it. So many of us have memorized that verse, Proverbs 4:23, but we don't actually know how to live it. And God, I pray that you would help us by your Spirit's power. Speak to us about what our next step is. And God, we receive your supernatural power to have an understanding and an awareness that we wouldn't have on our own, to be able to detect the things that are subconscious, that are motivating our actions and non-actions on a daily basis. And God, we thank you for your love. We thank you for the way that you sent Jesus to die and resurrect from the dead, so that he broke apart death that we feel and bring us into new life. And God, I pray that for anyone who is here that has not made that decision, that they would make that move as the biggest move of their life. and to tell somebody. Write it down on their Connect card. We just receive your power as we receive communion in a little bit, as we receive your love through these words, as we worship you, God. We give our lives to you. And everybody said, amen. Thanks, guys.